Most estate agents completely misunderstand how their customers evaluate their experience with you, and in doing so, miss out on valuable opportunities for referrals, reviews, and instructions. So I'm going to tell you exactly how your customers' brains work, and after you've listened to this, it will probably completely change how you approach customer service and asking for reviews. Let's get into this. So what most of us assume is that when a customer assesses their experience with you, they're looking at the transaction, the period of time that they spent with you, no matter how long that is, and what they're doing is, we all know that a customer's experience comes out of a series of ups and downs, peaks and troughs of things that go well, pain points, frustrations, friction, successes, wins. And what we tend to think when we ask a customer to evaluate how happy they've been with our experience is they will reach an assessment in their minds that is essentially the average of their whole experience. They will average out the goods and the bads and come out with a final assessment that is okay or good. That's not how it works. To explain this, I'd like to take you back to the early 90s and a researcher called Daniel Kahneman, who went on to win a Nobel Prize for this piece of research. He was interested in how people assess their experiences and their journeys in life. He conducted an experiment with a group of people, and he gave them two options. They had to stick their hands into a bucket of icy cold water, 14 degrees Celsius, which is pretty close to freezing, for 60 seconds. Now they had a choice. They could either do that or they could choose a second option, which was to stick their hands into a bucket of icy cold water, 14 degrees Celsius, for 60 seconds, but then transfer their hands afterwards into a bucket of water that was 15 degrees Celsius for a further 30 seconds. The majority of people chose option B. They chose to prolong the pain simply because the final 30 seconds were slightly more pleasurable than the first 60. Now, what does this tell us? So he homed in on two particular moments, which when we evaluate experiences, tend to be the two moments that tell our brains whether we've had a good experience or not. And he calls this the peak-end rule. So first of all, there are two key moments that shape our impressions of whether something's been a good experience or a bad experience. And the first one, as I've just alluded to, is the ending. It's the moment the experience ends, and whether that experience was a good moment or a bad moment. So if you have had an average experience over the course of the timeline, but your end moment with your customer was brilliant, then that customer will go away with a positive impression of their experience with you. And there's a second moment as well, which is what Kahneman calls the peak. So the peak is the most memorable moment or the most emotionally resonant moment across the entire experience. So here we've got peaks and troughs. This peak moment is what the customer will take away from them. Now that peak could be a good one or a bad one, but it's the moment that stays with them. So we've got peaks and we've got the end moment, which is why this is called the peak-end rule. And the businesses with the most satisfied customers are the ones with the strongest end and the strongest peak. Now, what we tend to do as business owners is we concentrate on these troughs in the customer experience. And we're terrified of customers going away and leaving us bad reviews. So what we do is we work really hard to fill in the troughs. We fill in the troughs to remove those negative friction points. We think if we even out the entire experience, then that will leave the impression of a good overall experience. However, what that does is it simply removes the friction points. It ignores what's most important, which are the peaks. So the best businesses will give just as much attention to the peaks in the customer experiences and the end of the customer experience than they will in filling in those troughs. So you need to consider these three things in your customer experience. First of all, what are the friction points? Because I'm going to fill in those potholes in the road that my customers travel to remove those friction points. But we can't stop there, because all that does is it brings up the average. It brings up the worst possible moments that your customers could encounter, and it makes them not so bad. But no one raves about average. So we need to manufacture the peak point. So we need to create a really memorable, thoughtful, considerate moment during the experience. So in the world of property, this could be the exchange, it could be the completion, but we're getting very close to the end there. We need to find an emotionally memorable moment in the middle of the customer experience, and we need to make a big thing of it. We need to make it memorable. We need to do something unusual that other agents don't do. We need to manufacture that emotional peak somewhere in the middle or in the final third of the customer's experience. And then the third thing that we need to do, so we filled in the potholes, we've manufactured a peak, and the third thing we need to do now is we need a big ending. Just simply handing over the keys in the office is such a lackluster, disappointing moment. What a letdown on one of the biggest days of your customers' lives. So what we need to do is we need to manufacture a big ending that your customer will go away and remember and tell other people about. If you give them a bottle of champagne, it's a step in the right direction, but everybody does that. So do you really think your customer is going to go away talking about that? What can you do at that moment and at that moment that is memorable and worth telling other people about? That is my challenge to you. So don't get obsessed by simply addressing the friction points in your customer's journey. You need to manufacture a peak moment, and you need to manufacture a big ending. Genuinely big. Something that people will go away and tell their friends about. If you can do that, then you won't just have happy customers, you will have raving fans, you will have loyal advocates who won't just write you a Google review, but they'll go away into the community, tell their friends, tell their colleagues, tell their neighbours what a great experience they had about you. So don't rely on the average of someone's experience. Rely on the peak and the ending, and you will have loyal advocates who will help you to grow your business.